are. And I think we better get it right this election, or we may lose the greatest country God ever made and never get it back. So that's kind of why I get really wound up a lot. It's important, especially this election, that members of Congress, and before I started running for re-election, I did this. I made a pledge when I got elected, feels like 100 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that I would be the most accessible member of Congress. Now, what does that mean, accessible? That means that I wanted to give every voter in my district, even the ones that didn't vote for me, countless opportunities to directly tell me what you think. I replaced a woman who replaced a man who never did this. They would make votes, they'd never come home and hold town halls, let everybody, anybody, tell the congressman what they think. It drove me crazy. You know the deal, I know the deal. We send people to Washington, Republicans and Democrats. They tend to stay there forever. The longer they're there, the more easily they forget about us. And I'll tell you, when they make votes, especially tough votes that they know might upset people, you don't get an opportunity to get in front of them. So I just made a promise that, look, I'm going to come home every weekend. I sleep on my floor in Washington. I'm going to come home every weekend and I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold town halls. I specifically said I'm going to hold more town halls than any member of Congress. And we've done it. And when we hold town halls, if you've been to one of my town halls, there aren't a lot of rules. I've got some staff here, but no staff member is getting in front of you and me. When you walk through that door, I'll bet you one of my staff members didn't come up and say, write down your question for the congressman. I don't want to know what your question is until you ask it, because that's an old trick. They screen out the tough questions so that members of Congress, I'll only answer the real softballs. Boy, Mr. Walsh, how come you're such a great guy? Don't laugh! This is what they do.
Yes, sir.
Final point. You see these cameras? Now that one I know, that's mine. But these cameras, these aren't from friends. These are from the opposition. This is the other reason members of Congress hate to do this. Because every single word I'm saying is being taped. And if Joe Walsh says a real doozy, oh my gosh, it could be out there on YouTube and going viral before you know it. And you know what? That scares politicians. Final point I'll make and then I'll shut up. It's like we've trained our politicians to be like seals. Do you know that every single word most politicians say, they talk to consultants about, they poll test every word? I'm so sick of that. It's like we've trained our politicians to be afraid to tell the truth. Most importantly, we've trained our politicians to be afraid to tell you what they really think. That's so sad. And it's so wrong. But you know what? We've done that to them. The media's done that to them. And then they hire people who train them to be that way. I said when I got elected, no way, I'm not going to be that way. I am Joe Walsh. I'm going to tell you what I think. If it angers you, I'm sorry. If it means I'm not going to have your vote, I'm sorry. This great, good, decent, compassionate country is broke. What's your first name? Carolyn? This great, good, decent country right now is piling an ungodly amount of debt on top of Carolyn's head. I refuse to be cautious and poll tested about what I say, because what we're doing to Carolyn is so damn wrong. And you know what? We got a little bit of time to fix it, or we'll never recover, and Carolyn's going to be stuck with everything. So I think in these very interesting, important times that we live in, I don't want my politicians to poll test every word. I want to know what you think. What, Walsh or Duckworth or Obama or Romney, what are you going to do about all this debt? What, Walsh or Duckworth or Obama or Romney? Welcome, folks. Come have a seat. Pull some of those seats out, guys.
Here you go, guys. Have a seat. There's chairs over here.
Come sit anywhere. I don't bite. Well, sometimes I do.
There you go.
What, politicians, are you going to do about the fact that right now the unemployment rate in this country is not 8.1%? The next politician that tells you that, turn around and walk away. In this country, what we should do is count the real unemployed, and when we count people who are working part-time because they can't find full-time work, or, here's another doozy, why does your government, when we give you the unemployment rate, why don't we count the people that have become so discouraged they've quit even looking for work? We don't count them, but you know what, when you count all these people, we've got an unemployment rate in this country of close to 19%. That's depression level unemployment.
24 million, I hear.
That's depression level unemployment. This great, good country is shaky. And I refused, when I got elected 2 years ago, to be one of those politicians that all they're going to worry about is getting reelected. Oh my God, all I want to do is get reelected. That's not me. That's not what drives me. That's not what motivates me. What motivates me is Carolyn. And I refuse to not do my little part to try to avoid a day 20 years from now when this gorgeous young girl is going to have 2 or 3 or 4 kids. She's going to be out there making a great living, but every dollar she makes is going to go to taxes to our government to pay our bills, because your politicians today didn't have the courage to deal with it. Shame on all of us if we let that happen. So, the only rule here, guys, is respect. Treat everybody in this room with respect. Liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, I don't care what you are. I'm glad you came. Every opinion is worthy. Every thought is important. Treat every opinion with respect, and for the next 4.5 hours, we'll have a really good time. Lock those doors. Click. All right, who wants to start off? Any issue, any topic, anything? Yes, sir. If you're filibustering, meaning if you're going on too long, I'm going to pull the hook on you. Go ahead.
You haven't had a chance to see this, but I just printed this off and you can have it wet.
Say that again?
I just printed this off of a YouTube presentation that was prepared by a CPA that worked for 40 years for IBM. He analyzed the federal budget. This is what Joe was talking. You haven't had a chance to see this yet. Here, you
No.
know.
I don't know if I can carry that.
Take a look at
It's a lot of debt.
That's where your debt's going, young lady. I'll probably be dead by then.
Let me do something very interesting and very important. Because you know, when we talk about trillions of dollars, I don't know about you, but when I hear that our country's $16 trillion in debt, and by the way, that's a lie, it's not 16 trillion. But when I hear trillions, my eyes start to glaze. So let me do 2 things to you. So what's your first name? Huh? Taylor. I have a niece named Taylor. That's a beautiful name. Carolyn, you're not alone. We've got Taylor in here. I want to do 2 things to make you understand what this good, great country is doing to Carolyn and Taylor.
Hey, Joe.
Huh?
Let me tell you something.
You're fine. Go ahead.
I read in the paper, here's the quota. You could take $1 billion and put $1 each side by side and go around the world with a 2.5 times.
You know what?
That gives you an idea how much $1 billion.
Probably you could, you're right. And that, again, that just makes me dizzy. So let me bring it back down to earth. Every morning of every day, your government goes to its banker. Mr. Government or Mrs. Government goes to its banker every morning of every day and says, I'd like to borrow $4 billion today. Okay, so the banker sits down, ooh, I got a good one here. Banker sits down with the government and says, I need to borrow $4 billion today. Now, let me make a big point. That's not how much money your government spends every day. That's just how much money your government borrows. So the government goes to its banker and says, I need to take out a loan for $4 billion. Fine. The banker says, great, here's $4 billion. How are you going to repay that loan? And the government says every single day, comma, don't worry about that. No, write down on the sheet, future generations will take care of it. And then the government goes on its way, does its work, the sun comes up the next morning, the government goes back to its banker and says, I need to borrow another $4 billion today. We do this day after day after day. Let me bring it even closer to home. Where are we? Lombard?
Yes.
Lombard. We're in Lombard. What state am I in?
Confusion.
We did about a gazillion campaign events yesterday. We're going to do a gazillion today. So sometimes even I get a little absent-minded. So, forget about trillions. Let's imagine that your government is a family of 4 people living in Lombard. Great town. Taylor, this is your family or Carolyn's family. Forget about trillions, folks. Forget about trillions. Your government is a family of 4 living in Lombard. Here's how that family of 4 did last year. They had a rough year. That family of 4 only made $22,000. We can relate. A tough year. What does he want, the rice or the potatoes? That family of 4 living in Lombard made $22,000 last year. That family of 4 living in Lombard that made $22,000 spent $37,000. Remember, get rid of trillions. That's what your government did if they were a family of 4 last year living in Lombard. They made 22, mom and dad had a rough year, they spent $37,000. How do they sleep at night? Hang on, hang on, hang on. The story's not over. That family of 4 in Lombard that made $22,000 and spent $37,000 has an outstanding credit card debt of $150,000. How are they still alive? When you get rid of the trillions, this is what your federal government did last year and will do again this year. Stop this, folks. Stop this. Many of us, well, we're living with it right now, but just think about what we're doing to the young people in this room. This is wrong.
Great-grandchildren.
Huh?
To their great-grandchildren.
To our kids. I have 3 kids. Everybody knows I have kids, right? I have 3 kids, 25, 22, and 18. Just turned 18. My youngest just turned 18. I don't have grandkids yet. To their kids and their kids. Because your politicians, Republican and Democrat, don't have the courage to do what's right and pay their bills because all they want to do is get reelected.
Well, who are you going to cut out?
Well, let's talk about that.
How do you get rid of the Federal Reserve? How do you do it?
Well, you know what? Here, let me give you a real easy, honest answer right now.
1913,
Okay.
Jekyll Island was the start of this problem.
Let me stop you. That isn't going to be solved this year, next year, or the year after.
I agree.
It's something that needs to be looked at, but that's not going to do anything to our problem right now. Other thoughts, issues, questions about anything? I don't want this debt to dominate the debate. Whatever you guys want to talk about.
Nothing else matters.
How do you propose to reduce the government
I
spending?
want to know who you're going to cut.
Same question. What are you going to cut? How do you propose to reduce government spending? Let me start out simply and then I'll get specific, okay? So hang in there with me. It's taken us a long time to get into this problem. Does everybody agree with me? Look, I think President Obama had no business getting elected. I don't think he knows what he's doing as president, but he didn't start this mess. He's made things worse. Republicans and Democrats for the last 60 to 100 years have gotten us into this mess. So it's going to take some time to get out of this mess. And everything has to be on the table. The problem is, what we've let happen in America is, we've let government do too many things for too many people. Instead of having a government, a good, decent government, that took care of the truly needy, we've let government get to a point over years where it takes care of everybody. We're finding out right now we can't afford it. Let me give you one tough problem. Program. Medicare. I'm running